Welcome again to another edition of Talking Politics and Other Issues with Dotun Oladipo. I am your regular host and managing editor of the Eagle Online, an online newspaper operating at www.theeagleonline.com.ng. This week, and on this episode, we'll be looking at perhaps the most discussed issue in Nigeria this week, and that is the controversy over the purchase of new presidential jets for both President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima. This issue was broached by the House of Representatives when one of its committees, after undertaking a review and inventory of the aircraft in the presidential fleet, and came up with a resolution that both the president and his deputy really require new aircraft for the official duties. The issue from both sides of the divide, those involved on both sides, that is for the masses and then the government itself, largely the presidency, has generated so much debate that the decision to be taken on it at this point in time in the life of the country will be a very critical and crucial one. How did we come to this point? Some time ago, the president traveled out of the country and was supposed to visit Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom. But on getting to Saudi Arabia, the aircraft with which he traveled, that is the Air Force One, could not make the trip to the United Kingdom. He then had to join a commercial flight from Saudi Arabia to the United Kingdom. Following this development, the House of Representatives then took an inventory of the aircraft in the presidential air fleet and came to the conclusion that there is a need for both President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima to have newer aircraft to fly them around. So why has this become a very heated debate? Those who are opposed to the purchase of new aircraft for both the president and the vice president have said this is not the best time in the life of Nigeria to embark on such spending. And they've made their positions and made it very firmly. This is because at this point, a lot of Nigerians are complaining, and bitterly so, about the cost of living. It is also at a time that Nigerian workers are angling for better pay. While the federal government and organized private sector are offering 62,000 naira to workers, the organized labor are saying they deserve nothing less than 250,000 naira. And this was the position that was told by the presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 election in Nigeria, Peter Obi. Peter Obi was on point and very much so at home with a lot of Nigerians who feel that a presidential aircraft is a luxury at this time in the life of the country, especially with the suffering that masses are going through. Indeed, a lot of people complained over the weekend, that is during the Salah celebration, that they could not even afford to eat, not to talk of slaughtering rams. Let me quote what Peter Obi said on his X handle on the issue. He said, At a time when our country is on the front page of global newspapers for facing its worst economic crisis, marked by high inflation, a falling currency, and widespread poverty, the government is contemplating buying new presidential jets. This demonstrates extreme insensitivity to citizen struggles. With rising insecurity, poverty, hunger, and homelessness, this decision highlights the disconnect that is apparent between the government and the people. It is unacceptable as the situation in the country today, more than ever, demands a more compassionate use of resources, prioritizing citizens' welfare. It is on record that our presidential jets have an average age of 12 years, purchased when most Nigerians could afford necessities. Now, as our country faces significant challenges, including a high debt profile, our citizens are in even greater need. Instead of adding to our luxuries, we should be focused on alleviating their suffering and finding solutions to their problems. For long, our bad leadership has made our priorities as leaders to be at variance to the needs of society, which is why we are headed now south as a nation. To elucidate further, despite dropping to the fourth largest economy in Africa, with a GDP of $252 billion and a per capita income of $1,080, with huge debt burdens and borrowing to service debts, yet we are spending $15 million for our vice president's residence, while the USA, the world's largest economy with a GDP of $25 trillion, about 100 times our GDP, and a per capita income of $80,000, about 80 times ours, still houses their vice president in number 1 observatory circle, a house built over 100 years ago, and whose value is less than the $15 million we are spending on our VP's residence. A reputable real estate company reports that the US vice president's official residence is valued at $7.5 million today. While we had earlier refurbished the old VP residence with $2 million, the over 100-year-old US Vice President's house has only undergone wide-scale renovations twice, funded by taxpayers' money in 1993 and 2021. Every new US VP is free to finance any minor refurbishing from his funds. It is therefore time to stop this impunity, insensitivity, and shamelessness and refocus on the needs of our people. We must prioritize education, healthcare, and lifting our citizens out of poverty. Let us work together to build a nation that truly serves its people, not just the interests of a few. Let's rise to the challenge and build this new Nigeria, which is now more possible than ever before. End of the quote. That was Peter Obi speaking. And then he had support from the Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, which said that new presidential jets is just an expensive gambit at a time many Nigerians are living in squalor. While faulting the presidency for this move, the body, that is Uriwa, says over 133 million Nigerians are facing hunger, massive poverty, and deprivation at a time the presidency is considering what was recommended by the House of Representatives for it to buy new presidential jets for both the president and the vice president. The position of Peter Obi, a former governor of Anambra State, who did 2 terms, has attracted condemnation, huge one at that, from the presidency and Muslim Rights Concern, an Islamic human rights organization. But first, let's take what the presidency had to say through the special advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga. His take is that Peter Obi obviously wants the president dead by advising that new presidential jets should not be bought for his use and that of the vice president. In an interview he granted The Punch, after Obi's comments on the proposed presidential jet purchase, Bayo Onanuga said, and let me quote him also in full, "Does Peter Obi want the president dead? Is that his wish? Does he want him to continue moving around in a rickety plane and die like the VP of Malawi and the Iran president? Let him tell us. The plane he uses now, I learned, was bought during former President Obasanjo's era. That was over 20 years ago, and I learned it was a very small plane. The plane developed a problem the last time he traveled to Saudi Arabia. The president had to go from there to the UK on a commercial airline. Even those managing them said the aircraft needed to be replaced." Onanuga also had the backing of the Muslim Rights Concern, like I said, which issued a statement on June 18 through its executive director, Professor Ishaq Akintola. The statement quoted Akintola as having said that Peter Obi is shedding crocodile tears. And let me take him, quoting him from here. "His interest is not the improvement of Nigeria's economic situation or that of the common man, but to bring disaster to the presidency. Peter Obi knows his evil intentions. Peter Obi's body language since the declaration of the results of the 2023 presidential elections has exposed him as a bitter politician and a bad loser who cannot come to terms with the reality of his defeat. Obi is a Trumpist. He will go to any length to bring disaster to his perceived political enemies. Little wonder, therefore, that Obi is here to condemn his supporters for calling for a military coup months after their treasonable offenses. As far as Obi and other irrational critics are concerned, they wish what happened to the Iranian president, Raisi, recently, and the Malaysian vice president last week should happen in Nigeria. God forbid. How many times do we have to drum into the ears of this far-right, ultra-nationalist opposition cartel that the presidential jets are already worn out? They have become rickety, risky, and unserviceable. They are broken down so many times during trips. For instance, President Tinubu had to continue his journey on a commercial plane very recently after two presidential jets broke down simultaneously. Also on 7th May 2024, Vice President Kashim Shettima had to shelve a trip to the United States for a US-Africa Business Summit when the presidential jet developed a fault 1 hour after takeoff. Is this not scary enough? What does Peter Obi and his co-travelers want? Yet we have no scintilla of doubt that this set of desperate opposition will be the first to send hypocritical condolence messages if their serpentine wishes for the president or his vice become fait accompli. But it is the duty of patriotic and compos mentis Nigerians to ensure that no disaster occurs. Let me end the quotation there because it continues far more and more. But the big question to ask is, why are Nigerians who are opposed to the presidential jet purchase at this time doing so? And there are so many, and we'll take a few of them. While the constitution or any other law in the country does not make a provision for who and who should have access to the presidential jets, we've all come to live with the fact that the president and his family, the vice president, the president of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives are entitled to use the presidential jets alongside others approved by the president. But a lot of people have expressed concern about the usage these jets have been put to. One of such came up recently when the president's son, that is Seyi Tinubu, was spotted in one of the jets alighting at Kano to attend a private and somewhat personal event, that is a polo tournament in Kano. A lot of people came down on him because not only did he travel in the presidential jet, he was also formally received by a huge crowd that included government officials and a retinue of security men, which included operatives of the Department of State Services, that's our secret police, the DSS, and policemen who ferried him to and fro the venue of that event in Kano, and then until when he left that city. One of those who criticized that journey was a UK-based Nigerian journalist, Jafar, who said on his ex-handle, let me quote him, "Here is Tinubu's golden child, Sheyu, traveling in the presidential jet to watch polo in Kano. Even if our laws are vague on this, one thing is clear. This is an offense to the moral code of leadership." Another person who simply identified himself as Aliyu said, "The use of presidential jets for personal or non-official purposes by public officials can raise concerns about transparency and accountability. It is essential for leaders to uphold ethical standards and set a good example for the public. Transparency and adherence to rules can help combat corruption and ensure that government resources are used responsibly." Another ex-user, Bello Anka, said, "See them in the pictures. The other day he went skateboarding in Abuja with them running by the side. This is just a continuation of the culture of impunity from the previous government, perhaps an even grander one." And what was Anka referring to here by this continuation of impunity of the previous government? It is also on record that the daughter of former President Muhammadu Buhari also used the presidential jet to attend a private function in Bauchi. She was invited by the government there as a professional photographer to capture some scenes for them during a function. And then it was the country's presidential jet that was used. There have also been criticisms about the usage of that jet by the president of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, when he took it to Uyo in Akwa Ibom State for his 61st birthday. So, a lot of people keep questioning what we are doing with the presidential jets, if it's just for the use of the president and the vice president. There have been arguments, and correctly so, that in a situation where any individual, not even the president alone, needs to make a shuttle that requires different stoppages, it is cheaper to have your own jets, whether chartered or bought. In that case, it makes life easier. Journeys can be planned easily, and you can have control over your time. For instance, the president went to South Africa just on Tuesday, June 18, for the inauguration of the elected president of South Africa. He's back in the country because a chartered jet was used. A commercial flight would not have done that for the president, and he could have spent days traveling and waiting for connecting flights. But in all of this, Nigerians are asking for the cost of maintaining these jets over time. At the last count, in 2022, Nigeria was said to have spent about 90 billion naira taking care of presidential jets. This has made it very annoying for a lot of people who feel that the use to which these jets are being put do not warrant keeping them. As of October 2016, what the Presidential Air Fleet had were 10 aircraft. We had a Boeing business jet, which we call the Air Force One, 737, a Gulfstream G550, one Gulfstream G550, another one Orca 4000, two Falcon 7X, two Augusta Westland AW139 helicopters, and two Augusta Westland AW101 helicopters. This has become more of a burden for the country because year in, year out, billions of naira are spent in taking care of these jets. According to a report, as of 2015, the 20 Appropriation Act signed by former President Buhari allocated 3.652 billion naira for the upkeep of the presidential fleet. In 2017, the cost of maintaining this aircraft and doing other things on it rose to 4.37 billion naira. Then in 2018, it went up to 7.260 billion naira. 2019 had it at 7.297 billion naira. It fell in 2021 to 6.793 billion naira. And then it went up again, jumping to 12.550 billion naira the following year. This is a lot of concern for Nigerians who feel that spending such huge amounts in the face of poverty in the country, where over 133 million are said to be living in abject poverty, does not hang together. And that the government should, as it promised, ensure that some of these aircraft are sold instead of grossing bills over time. What is more astonishing is that even when presidents, like it happened in the case of Muhammadu Buhari, have to go out of the country on even what could be termed private visits, including medicals, these aircraft are parked wherever they are for days. And we get to the point where Nigerians will start asking questions. For instance, when the president was out of the country for a very long period of time, at some point during the calculation, President Buhari was said to have spent 213 days, not consecutively anyway, out of the country in the United Kingdom for medical care. When the parking fees were checked at some of the airports in the UK, for instance, the Birmingham airport in the UK, the cost of parking any aircraft is between £23.87 and £166.67. That is between 13,605 naira and 95,000 naira per day. When that is multiplied by 213, it comes to a lot, especially for those who are agitating for better pay. According to that calculation, what Nigeria must have spent for the president just on his aircraft parking in the UK will be between 2,898,056 naira 70 kobo and 235,404 naira 70 kobo in sparking the presidential aircraft for the period former President Muhammadu Buhari was in the UK. There have been so many attempts to defend all of this, but then we've had to, on this show, now compare what happens in other countries so that we can get an idea of what Nigeria is spending on the presidential jets and what other countries are spending and how they are managing their own resources. And these countries are countries that many people believe are far better in terms of their economic standing than Nigeria. In Ghana, information available online shows that the presidency has only one Dassault Falcon, a 900X, which is usually tagged GHA-1 whenever the president is using it. In Kenya, information online shows that, yes, Kenya also has a presidential jet, but occasionally the president of Kenya still flies Kenya Airways. For the UK, the British government and the royal family, they have 4 aircraft, 2 helicopters. Nigeria has 10 till date from information that can be gleaned. For South Africa, which is regarded in Africa as almost Nigeria's rival in terms of everything, including football, the South African Air Force takes charge of the presidential movement. Designated as LMG-1 when flying the president, the Boeing used by the South African Air Force is also being used by other politicians in the country, depending on what the president says. There were also details of how many times some of these presidents have used the Boeing in the presidential fleet. For instance, for Zuma, 2019 to 2020, he flew it 72 times. In 2010, 2021, he flew it 84 times. The deputy president also uses a Falcon 900, which is also under the South African Air Force. Other countries we have seen, including Egypt, all use their carriers for the presidency. Nigeria has no national carrier. What we had, Nigeria Airways, went down a long time ago. It's not as if the Egyptian authorities also do not have their own presidential jets. But a more richer country, like some people have argued, has not indulged in the kind of spending Nigeria has done on its presidential jets. For the US, which is where we have copied that democracy from, step-styled. Information online shows that there are 3 aircraft in the presidential fleet, and that the president is made to use any of the 3, depending on the flights and available runways where they are going. So the big question is, for a lot of Nigerians, if we have spent in 9 years, that is up to 2023, 90 billion on the presidential air fleet, and even the aircraft that developed fault in Saudi Arabia was recently sent to the US for repairs, why will a country in economic dire strait like ours embark on buying 2 jets to fly the president and the vice president? That is the crux of the matter, and that is why the country has engaged in this debate. If you ask us on this show, what do we feel? We won't provide a position, but we have provided you with all the facts and figures that you need to take a position. Labour is agitating for salary increase. Nigerians are crying over economic hardship. Insecurity has taken over the land. Yet, we also know, as a matter of importance, that the president needs to be able to move at the time he wants and conveniently so. But a line has to be drawn between what is of utmost importance and what is of utmost good to the citizenry. As I wind down, let me say, we'll be back again with another episode of Talking Politics with Dotun Oladipo. I'm still your host, Dotun Oladipo. To drop your comments, you can do so under this video in the comment section. You can also send us an email at dotunoladipo@theeagleonline.com.ng. dotunoladipo@theeagleonline.com.ng. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, The Eagle Online Nigeria. Until I come your way again, I'm your regular host, Dotun Oladipo. See you.